Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Prince Ghosh, the co-founder and CEO of Workbench. Good afternoon, Prince. How you doing?
I'm good, Mark. I'm good.
That's good. So to start with, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Prince. I went to school at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Ohio, an engineer by background. Originally started my work experience working with a defense contractor for NASA. So I was working in a supply chain and operations role there for a while, doing a lot of work in the defense industry. After that, me and my co-founder, we actually founded our first company, Boundary Labs. So we were building a factory floor analytics solution, got really embedded in the manufacturing community in Cleveland, where we were based out of and where we went to school, and ran that for a while and scaled that business for a while. Ended up shutting that down eventually, about a year later, and ended up starting Workbench shortly after, which is kind of where I am now. So brief stint in corporate work experience, and then it's just been startups from that point on.
So in your brief experience, what has been your experience with remote employment, both as an employee and an employer?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of my experience with remote employment has been as an employer now with Workbench, running a team and scaling and growing a team now. Remote work is, really fascinating because I think it's shown us that we're able to get a lot out of our week from one, the comfort of our own homes, two, by shaving a lot of those extra seconds of time that we would have been using to commute, to get stuck in traffic, etc. So it's been really powerful from that standpoint. I think along with the benefits, though, there come challenges, probably most notably one, ensuring that you're able to build a culture of communication. And I think that's paramount, right? Communication and respect for your fellow peers, your colleagues, that becomes paramount when you do remote work, because you want to respect other people's timelines. You want other people to respect your timelines. And you want to be almost over communicative so that you can ensure that there's nothing lost in the process. We've experimented at Workbench both with synchronous remote work and asynchronous remote work. So me and my co-founder Lucas, we do both. What we found is that synchronous work, so getting onto the same Zoom call, a same phone call, is fantastic for a lot of more of our creative endeavors, or when we're ideating about, which employee to hire, what is a product decision we need to make. Whereas asynchronous work is really great for once we make those decisions, and then we just need to go off, focus, zone in, and get that work done. So we've been, along with everyone else right now, really messing around with remote work, seeing the power of what we can do with it, and leaning into it as much as we can.
Very cool. So what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think can be done differently to make it more effective?
Yeah. I think we'll see an interesting model over the next couple of years emerge of a hybrid of in-person workspaces and remote work come about. And I think it's important because there's almost two distinct economies within the working economy that we can sort of distinguish by, right? At least in the fields of software and engineering and technology. And that's pretty much broken into those two fields of knowledge workers. One set who are really focused on ideating and creative, right? And as I mentioned, synchronous work lends itself well for a lot of that. And I think we'll see a resurgence of, the office space, the use of even something like a whiteboard as such a tactile way to generate new ideas and ideate on new ideas reemerge and come back to their full strength. But I think we'll see a huge push for remote work amongst the set of knowledge workers who's really focused on the execution and operational side of things, where it's not so much ideation, where the tasks are at hand that they've been laid out, and now it's just work that needs to be done. In situations like that, it makes perfect sense to, stay at home, avoid the commute into the office, and just get down to work and focus on it. So, remote work is one of those things, like, as we've started to lean into a more globalized world over the last 20 years, and we've seen modern companies out of Silicon Valley opening offices in London and India and, Shanghai. We've leaned into sort of some of these hybrid remote work cultures over the last couple of years, which I think has been super fortuitous. I think it's just about, embracing that at an even higher standpoint, and seeing a lot more companies even earlier on in their life cycles start leaning into that hybrid remote work culture.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I've seen your website, your product, actually, you work with contract manufacturing, which, a certain amount of that has to be non-remote. So what is the story behind Workbench? Can you tell us exactly what you do and who your target audience is?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, my co-founder Lucas and I, we spent the initial parts of our careers working in first R&D, supply chain operations in the industrial space, and then we actually spent some time building a factory floor analytics company. So working a lot on the manufacturing side of things, and we were building this quote unquote digital operating system for manufacturing. But what always sort of interested us in that process was seeing not necessarily how we could just improve or optimize efficiency between any one node in a supply chain, but looking at the interactions between multiple nodes of a supply chain and saying, how can we make that process even more efficient? So manufacturing is this, really legacy industry that's such a huge contributor to the world's GDP. I mean, every physical thing around us is manufactured at some place, somewhere. And it's sort of this underlying economy that we don't see too much of. What Lucas and I are particularly passionate about, and our entire mission behind Workbench, is to build a suite of tools to help this industry and this economy perform as well as they can. And that's sort of the genesis and idea behind Workbench. So Workbench at its core, we're building a platform for production. We sell to modern brands launching physical goods, and they invite their contract manufacturers overseas or sometimes in the US on board to the platform, and it's a place where they can collaborate on production information. So we're trying to build a suite of vertical tools to help supplement this industry and create, interconnectedness between a manufacturer somewhere in, Southeast Asia and a product development team or a manufacturing team launching a new product out of New York or San Francisco.
It's very interesting. So how did you incorporate the idea of remote at your company? I mean, since you're actually helping that industry, that other industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Manufacturing is an industry that's historically been really non-remote. It's been a very in-person sort of industry. When you establish a relationship with your manufacturer, you go overseas and you visit the manufacturing site, you tour the shop floors, and you see firsthand how things are being made. In this post-COVID world, you can't quite do that. Where in a previous version of the world, a production team might fly down to a supplier site in Mexico or in China and do a visual inspection of the parts themselves, that's just not possible right now. So the teams and companies that we've seen performing their best are the ones that have embedded a sense of process into their operations and that have leaned first into collaboration in their operations. What this functionally means is a lot of reliance on Zoom calls, a lot of reliance on strong documentation. We have leaned into that firsthand, and a big part of how we market our tool is as a collaboration tool for companies and their contract manufacturers. And we've created this almost center and source of truth that enable modern brands and the contract manufacturers they work with to work either synchronously or asynchronously as they carry out this production lifecycle for new parts. So it's something that we've really embraced firsthand, and it's something that we're trying to help the companies that we serve with.
And interesting, we've talked about the pandemic a little bit, and almost the whole world had to go remote.
Yep.
In mid-March, and I wonder if that caused any major roadblocks or challenges that you didn't expect for your company, and even also for your customers, because it really had to hit them hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll answer the customers portion first. March was definitely a really challenging time for a lot of physical goods companies. Supply chains were strained because of manufacturing sites going down and not reopening because of health concerns. Constrained amount of shipping and logistics because of also health concerns there. So there were multiple blockers at multiple nodes in the supply chain. What we saw come back to life first was the manufacturing centers themselves. So a lot of them, they embraced really healthy practices of masks, gloves, and social distancing. And a lot of Asian and American manufacturing was able to come back online relatively quickly. The big bottleneck that persisted was in the shipping logistics, where there were fewer planes flying, there were fewer ships running, and that created a bottleneck in getting products from the factories in China overseas back into the port of New Jersey or the port of Oakland. So that's the big sort of problem that emerged. A lot of that over the last couple of weeks has sort of unclogged as we're seeing towns and cities and countries now slowly opening up one after another. So things have been steadily getting better. So that's really been great to see and great to hear. From a inter-company sort of standpoint, we finished up Y Combinator over this past winter 20 batch. So did that from January through March. And we finished it out with a strong fundraise. We ended up raising a pre-seed round led by some tremendous investors and angels in that process. And for us, hiring was sort of the next big step to start growing out our team, past just me and my co-founder. We, within just the two of us, value the culture that we've built a lot, even just between the two of us, and we're looking for candidates who fit in with that culture and who can help grow and expand that culture. That's obviously a lot easier to do when you can meet candidates on site, when you can go out and have a coffee with them or grab a meal with them, when you can, almost embed them as a part of your team and see what's happening. It's an additional level of tricky to be able to do that over Zoom calls. But we, as with everyone else, have had to adapt. We had to fundraise online. We've had to make our first hire online. And that's something that we've had to do. And, again, we leaned into it and we just tried to make the best of it, traded off the logistical constraints of flying a candidate out to meet us with the ability to meet with them more frequently over Zoom and get to know them over a longer duration of time and spend more time with them before we made an offer. So it's ended up working out at the end, but we're sort of looking forward to getting back into seeing other people, getting back into an office and having a place where we can really call headquarters and home for our company, but also leaning into this concept of remote employment and setting up a culture where we can succeed, even if we do Thursdays and Fridays work from home. So that's something that we're sort of being cognizant of.
And I know where you are. You're in Pennsylvania somewhere. Do you foresee that you'll have an office in that area somewhere or somewhere else, or do you foresee being remote as possible?
Yeah, so for the near future, remote is sort of what we're doing, and we're taking it in stride, and everyone's falling in really well with it. In the near future, we're hoping to set up an office in New York and sort of have that as our headquarters and centerpiece of operations.
Oh, very interesting. So there are companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups. How important do you think this will be going forward for a company like yourself, who eventually you're going to need to hire a fair amount of people, and you're going to need to hire the right people. So how important do you think that will be going forward?
Absolutely. I think it'll be tremendously important. At its core, people are what make up any company's identity. Mm-hmm. People are what help companies execute on the roadmaps. For us, especially, we are a pure software company, but we have a services component around integrations and around professional services that we sell. So having the right people for the job, be it for front-end development, back-end development, full-stack development, or from a service aspect, is super, super critical to us as a company. Hiring is one of our top priorities, and it will continue to be as we continue to raise funding over the next couple of months and years and continue to scale our operations, our customer base. So tremendously important, to say the least.
Yes. Well, Prince, I want to thank you for your time today. This has been very enlightening, and I wish you luck in the future, and have a great day.
Sounds great, Mark. Thank you.
All right. Bye.